Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Government House. My name is Hugh Boreham and I have the honour to be the Governor's Official Secretary. As we start, could I please ask that you ensure that your mobile phones are turned to silent. The session is being streamed live on Facebook and will be available later on the Governor's website. Thank you for joining us today for the inaugural 2024 Winter Conversation. Today, we're exploring the opportunities and challenges of active ageing. Her Excellency will be in conversation with the Honourable Dr. Kay Patterson, AO, former Age Discrimination Commissioner, and Ms Anne Burgess, AM, the Chair of the Aged Care Council of Elders. Dr. Patterson was the Aged Care Discrimination Commissioner at the Australian Human Rights Commission for 7 years. During her term, she focused on issues including countering ageism, age discrimination in the workplace, elder abuse, and older women at risk of homelessness. Previously, Dr. Patterson served in the Australian Parliament as Senator for Victoria. She was appointed to Cabinet as Minister for Health and Ageing in 2001 and as Minister for Family and Community Services and Minister assisting the Prime Minister on women's issues in 2003. Before her parliamentary career while teaching at Lincoln Institute, now La Trobe University, she introduced gerontology into the undergraduate program and co-developed the first diploma in gerontology in Victoria. Ms Anne Burgess has a long history at executive level in government as the Director of Mental Health, Director of the Office for Women and Acting Commissioner for Equal Opportunity. Widely known as an exceptional consumer advocate, Ms Burgess has more than 40 years' experience in leadership roles focused on social fairness. Her service includes Chair of the Council of Elders, Deputy Chair of OPAN, a national organisation that provides support and advocacy for elderly people, and she's Deputy President of COTA in South Australia. The panel will talk for about 20 to 25 minutes and then we'll open the floor for questions. If you have a question, there will be roving microphones. When you get the microphone, can you please stand in your place, give your name, even if you think the Governor knows you. There are a lot of people here, it's hard to pick out the faces, and an affiliation if you have one. And can you please try and keep your questions concise so we can get through as many as possible in the time available. Your Excellency.
Gana bogana alia, gana miana alia, yaichi miana alia, kumitana yatananku. Yatu na tampandi, gana miana, yaichi ata matina, pukininanku, yalaka takaricha. I want to particularly welcome any Aboriginal people who may be with us today, whether from Ghana country or other lands and regions. I pay my respects to you and to the elders, and I also acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is Ghana country from the past, today, and into the future. Now, before I sit down and we get on with this, let me welcome you most warmly. Rod, my husband and I, and Rod's joining us today up in the back corner, very much want Government House to be a house for all South Australians, a place where you all feel welcome, interstate and overseas visitors also. And we're delighted that the weather has now turned. It feels like winter after 9 months of picnics on the lawns on the first Friday of each month with some wonderful music from bands and orchestras and young people with whom we have an association. We're back in the ballroom for a series of conversations. So I do recognise some familiar faces. Welcome back. Those who've joined us for the first time, I hope you enjoy this opportunity to think about issues that face us really as a society. The idea of the challenges of ageing well, which is really what Kay and Anne and I have been talking about, are societal-wide. Some of you may have been brought into the room because there's someone particular that you care about and you want to perhaps get some tips about how you can help them age well. Some of you, and maybe everybody, perhaps even myself included, have an interest in learning how we as individuals can age well. So that's, I should say actually, part of the reason we're doing this is because I am, and I think Rod too, patron of COTA, and we have responsibilities to COTA as patrons to be good friends, and it's lovely, you know, we're here partly because of my engagement with Anne and with COTA and the CEO and the President and all of those wonderful people. But Kay and I have known each other for quite a long time too. And when Kay was Age Discrimination Commissioner and I was Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, she pricked my conscience about something. I was a bit younger then, and there was something I'd failed to notice about getting older. So I'm very, without going into the specifics, very happy to acknowledge that today, because sometimes we do need other people just to point out something that we've failed to see ourselves. Now, having explained how I know Anne and Kay, I should say from the outset the two of them know each other very well. They both have significant birthdays this year, milestone birthdays, we could guess, but let's say they're both turning 80 this year. Now, I won't let you guess which one is 9 days older than the other, but they're very keenly aware of this themselves, and you see if you can pick it.
We should run away for that week together.
But look, I really wanted to start by asking each of them a very general question, and I might start with you, Anne. How did you get interested in this whole idea of ageing? We get there eventually ourselves, but you got there, both of you, well before you perhaps had to.
Yeah, so ageing for me sort of crept up on me, just like ageing does, in that I started off 100 years ago in mental health as a social worker in mental health. And it was at that time that I just realised how much stigma there was around and bias against people who had mental illness. And that's a theme that I think has sort of wound through everything I've done. So I moved from mental health into equal opportunity, where I met Kay not quite 100 years ago, but nearly. And in that role in equal opportunity, what I realised was that, and that's probably, I don't know, about 15 years ago or something now, that ageism was sort of the last of the isms that was out and people were talking about. We were at that stage talking a lot about sexism, and racism was emerging, but ageism nobody talked about, and it was just assumed that you got old and you disappeared really from the world. And it was very, very, I'm sure Kay will reflect on this as well, it was very, very hard to prosecute anyone on the basis of not employing somebody because of their age. It was the most difficult thing to do because the employers knew all they had to say was, it's nothing to do with their age, you know, they just can't do the job as well, or they mightn't be tech savvy as well, or it was really hard to do anything about it. So, and at that stage I was asked to join COTA. So from then on, I've had ageing as one of those things on my brain where I've thought, we need to do more about ageism. And then out came the Royal Commission that said, underneath everything that's gone wrong in aged care is a group, is the thought that we just don't have the right attitude towards people who are ageing.
Thank you, Anne. Over to Kay then, your interest.
Well, I had two absolutely wonderful grandparents, my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandfather, and I don't think we give credit to the sorts of roles that grandparents play in child development, but I idolised them, so they were very special in my life. And I started teaching at an institute which was now La Trobe, but it taught all the physiotherapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, podiatrists, medical record administrators, orthoptics and orthotics, and for the whole state of Victoria and also for Tasmania. And I was teaching introductory psych, research methods and child development because my background was in child development. And I thought, those kids are going to be working with older people. And if they think all older people are frail and hopeless, they'll set their rehab to here and they might get to there. But if they meet older people, and I had a friend of mine, mother who remarried when she was 75, they were both widows, and they moved into a new house with 2 showers. And she said to the students, because she used to come and talk to them, we pleasure each other in the shower. Well, they almost crawled under their desks. Oh my God, you know. And I said, you know, they're not just a liver or a bad knee or a hip. They're lovers, they're parents, they're grandparents. their friends, their aunts. And I started developing all these courses in gerontology, which is a study of ageing. But I had to go to America to actually get, because there wasn't anybody doing it here in Australia, and so I went to America twice on 2 trips in 83 and 86, and then came and helped with an OT and a physio. We developed undergraduate courses and also a postgraduate diploma. So that was quite a long while ago now, and it was fairly new, and people used to say, well, why are you doing this? I said, because I don't want this physiotherapist saying to me, oh, well, that's what happens, you're old, you can't improve that. And I've just been working on a knee that had operated on when I was about 35. And the physios there have been absolutely fantastic. They say to me, we'll put another 1.25 kilograms on that machine and you'll get that up. And I'm thinking, that's what I want. That's the sort of kid I wanted to be looking after me as a physio, giving me incentive to actually get this knee working and my glutes working again. So it's about, I guess, that and how I ended up in Parliament was some people who started the party with Robert Menzies came to me and said, you're interested in health, you're interested in education, and we've got an ageing population. And they said, these guys are doing nothing about it, we want you in Parliament. I laughed at them. But I then pursued a whole lot of issues in ageing in the Parliament. So it's been a passion, I guess, for a very long while.
Thank you, Kay. And already I think you've touched us then on some things that I'm sure will interest our audience today. And I've been told that one of your favourite sayings is that you would love to, quote unquote, blow up retirement. And we've just been talking over lunch about what an unhelpful word retirement is, because people's lives don't just stop at a certain age. How can people blow up retirement?
So now you're joining my campaign, aren't you, to blow up the word retirement? Because retirement's got all those connotations about retiring from life. You know, it's the end of your usefulness to society when you retire. And we all know that that's not true, but it puts that feeling into us, I think, that society doesn't want us anymore to be active and part of making decisions and whatever. So people have suggested to me other words like repurposing myself, which sounds a bit like commodifying me, which I don't like either. I think there's probably somebody in the audience today who, when he left full-time work, which is another way of talking about it, he took a gap year. And doesn't that give you a different feeling about what you're doing when you talk about a gap year? So words do matter, don't they? And I think the worst thing for older people is the assumptions that are made about us. So when we were talking at lunch about if I walked out onto North Terrace there and crossed North Terrace and got hit by a car, what do you think the media would say about me? You know, elderly lady, and immediately people in the community would think, oh, silly old thing, what was she doing? I bet she was trying to not walking fast enough or something like that, you know? So it's those sort of words that I think put a limit on the expectations of us, and we take them on as expectations of ourselves as well, which we must not do. So join the campaign.
Kay, I can see, I know you well enough to know you want to come in here.
To say something, because people would think Anne was retired, some of them, and I was on the Council of Elders and the then chairman left.
Can you explain what the Council of Elders is? It sounds like a good thing, but what is it?
The Council of Elders is a group of about 14 people who, and it was recommended by the Royal Commission into Aged Care that people with experience in the area, either aged care in the home or policy or whatever, to come together. The feistiest group you can ever imagine. I mean, they are feisty.
I can't chair it. So.
And then Anne came in to chair it, and I have to say that, because we'd had it as chairman for nearly a year and a bit, because I was on it for 2 years, and Anne came in and was on top of all the issues. I was I can say this, you can just sit there and humph. And she was on top of all the issues. If anybody thought she'd retired, forget that for a joke. She was on top of it. People can't, I mean, some of them are quite aggressive. I mean, you're not listening to what I'm saying. I've seen this, this is how they speak. I've seen this, and I think it's something that's got to be done. So we have to calm it down so that bureaucrats can take some information. But she is not retired in any way, shape or form. She might be being paid, but she's not retired, but she's doing a fantastic job in that area.
So is my fellow...
Yeah, of course. Now, mutual admiration, of course. But, Anne, can I come back to you? Because blow-up retirement is one thing, but you've also got another quite catchy thing. You think everyone should be able to live their lives with 2 P's and an F. What do you mean?
I do talk about my 2 P's and an F. So this is my thought about how to live well into your older age. My first P is about purpose, because I think there has to be something that gets you out of bed in the morning, that keeps you going when you feel like giving up. And it can be something, you know, like it can be having a better golf score or you know, playing cards and winning at bridge or whatever. For me, it's about giving something into society and feeling useful about that. It can, hopefully, I imagine this sort of audience, lots of volunteers around here. So it can be volunteering or whatever it is, but I think it's about purpose. And I was thinking it could be about learning Kaurna language, which is the most difficult language to learn, I can tell you. So Her Excellency learnt Kaurna in her holidays, so there you go.
I can't say, let's limit this. I can speak some Kaurna. I am not fluent in all aspects of the Kaurna language or Pitjantjatjara and Yankunytjatjara, but I did, after a lifetime of learning foreign languages, European languages, Chinese, I returned to South Australia to take on this role, and I was frankly embarrassed that I could not speak the main Aboriginal language spoken in South Australia, Ananun Pitjantjatjara and Yankunytjatjara. So I'm trying to redress that, but that's something that's, you know, personal to me. But anyway.
Yeah, and all the research shows us we should be learning other languages to keep our brain going. So that's the purpose. My second one is about people. So, you know, I think it's about getting out and about with people. And I mean people of, I love you all, but I could not be with older people all the time. I need to be with younger people and people who live all sorts of different lives. That sparks interest in you. And for me, the people and connections, we know about loneliness for older people. You know, that people connectedness is really important. And my third one, which is my F, I could have called it pleasure and kept another P, but that sounds too formal for me. So my F is about fun. So, you know, if you can create some fun in your life and play, all right. So Kay and I, every time we're together, we get a bit of fun going. And if you're lucky enough to get all those 3, like here today for me, all at once, that's an amazing day, isn't it? But I think that covers a lot of, you know, that really dense research boils down to something like those 3 aspects. So it's worth all the time for me thinking about, you know, am I being true to my purpose? Have I got enough people around me? And am I winding a bit of fun, which my family would say probably not, into all that as well? So that's my 2 P's and an F.
Thank you very much, Anne. Now, Kay, we agreed when we were thinking about this, we didn't want to shirk any difficult issues, and I just wonder, you've, in your role as Age Discrimination Commissioner, you obviously had to learn a lot about elder abuse. And I just wonder how you might help us get into that element of the conversation for anyone who's interested. We spoke at lunch again. We'd like everyone to have at least one thing to take away from today's conversation that they weren't aware of or might actually use in their own lives. But some of this is just something that we're not aware of, but in other cases it's more serious. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. I saw some stuff that I would hope I'd never have to see in that job. In fact, I thought sometimes I needed a counsellor for some of the stories. I was talking last night about how one gentleman over in Victoria was locked up in a room upstairs with a bathroom en suite by his niece, and he tried to get little bits of paper and make paper planes and fly them out to the next door neighbour to get the police to come and do a welfare check. And it went on, and I used to say to my staff, I can't believe that every day we either are told or see or hear about or have someone contact us about some terrible thing that's happening. It is another form of family abuse, but it's not always family. The number of older people who are scammed is appalling, losing all their life savings. They're seen as an easy cop. So I think one of the most important things is we need to open our eyes to elder abuse. And there's some wonderful groups. You know, we've got Hairdressers with Hearts in Queensland, and another group in Victoria, and there must be others in other states. When you go to well, girls go to the hairdresser, not the boys, but you know, you go to the same hairdresser for 20 years and you sit there and they say, how are you, your hair's not looking so good, and you say, oh, well, you know, I've on steroids or I've done such and such, but they know all about you. And then they found that people would say, oh, my husband's abusing me, or, for a younger person, or my children keep wanting me to sell my house and get some of the money to pay for their mortgage. And so they now have training sessions for hairdressers as where they can seek help, which I think is phenomenal. And I've been working with some of the physiotherapists. I went to the physiotherapy conference because they can, somebody will say, oh, my daughter doesn't think I need to come, it's too expensive, or what's that unexplained bruise? And what I work to try and do is to make everybody, all of us, understand whether you're a therapist, a social worker, a volunteer, a community visitor in aged care, every one of us should not be afraid to say, this needs to be looked at. Because often those people are very, very vulnerable and rarely are on their own. Often the hairdresser, they're on their own. Often the physio, they're on their own. Often when you visit, they're on their own. But if there's a relative there who's a perpetrator, they don't get the opportunity. So it's important to know where help can be found, and we've got some material outside for you. There's a national number, 1800 353, I just got to remember it, 374. You just look up the elder abuse phone line on the web, and that goes to the state where you've rung from. So if you've got a sister-in-law in Sydney who says, you know, the kids are driving me mad, they're wanting me to move, they won't give me a chance, they keep wanting money, then that's the number to ring, and it will go to the helpline in New South Wales. So there's help available, but it's absolutely vital. And all of us have got to think, this is our money, this is our home, and we should decide what happens to it, not have other people make us feel badly because they haven't got their deposit or they haven't got this. So I think it's a really important thing because it can start with petty filtering, you know, a bit of money out of that mum's account. Oh, my brother and sister aren't helping, I'll just take a bit of money for the petrol, through to, as I've had since I was in that job, while I was in that job, people being murdered, older people being murdered. And so it can go from the very small things right to the awful, awful end of elder abuse. So it's important that we all protect ourselves, especially from scamming, and also protect others by making sure that they know there's help available. It is, and it's a form of ageism. It's pernicious, and it's very prevalent. And ageism, when you look at all the stuff of the Royal Commission, it's at the root of all this. You don't deserve to live there, you don't deserve my help because you weren't a good mother, or whatever else. So ageism, and if you want to counteract ageism, you can join Every Age Counts, make a pledge, and have a look at what that's doing. It's an organisation that's in its infancy. It was, and I have to admit I'm on the director of Every Age Counts, but it's about getting younger people to think about every age counting. You know, whether you can be, you know, we can be just as ageist about young people. They all are on their telephone. They all don't help. That's wrong, you know, to label a group like that, whether you're young or old.
Speaking of younger people, perhaps, but adult children, can adult children be overly protective of our elderly parents? I'll say are rather than there. And where's the line?
Well, I have to make a confession. My mother came back from living in America for about 30 years, 5 years, and I was working in Canberra and living in Melbourne. I said, I'd like you to live in Melbourne or Canberra, it'd be easy for me. I want to go back to my magpies and my gum trees on the south coast where she came from. She grew up in the country. I had to catch myself from saying, it'd be better for you if you made it easier for me. I didn't say it, but that's what I was thinking. And with all the training I had, I was still trying to tell her what to do. She was about 68. I thought she was very old because I was 48. But I think that's, you take away, often people take away your autonomy.
Yes.
You know, I was thinking of moving into a retirement village. I said I couldn't have a bath. I said, but you can't have a bath. It's too dangerous. And I said, you know what, I'd be a rebellious resident. I'd make myself unhappy and everyone else unhappy. Thank you, give me my money back. I just thought, to tell me I couldn't have a bath. Out in the community, you might decide as, oh, I don't think I should get into the bath anymore. But that's your decision, not to tell me I can't have a bath. So there's all this subtle stuff about taking away your autonomy. Oh, we'll just do your banking for you. Oh, we'll just do this for you. And I was away with my family and they were all going sledding. And I got ready to go and they said, you're not going sledding. I said, why not? Well, you might have an accident. I said, well, the kids are going sledding. I'm going sledding. Well, you're allowed to go down to the first curve. I only had a heart attack walking up. If I'd got all the way down, I could have caught the little train back up. So we had 4 sleds, 8 people. I got in the 4. Every time it came up, I got the second one. And I went sledding. But that was the beginning of them not letting me do stuff. And that's 5 years ago. So don't let people stop you doing things because it's better for you. You know, you might break. Well, a kid might. We let kids rollerblade and, you know, do terrible things.
And if we're about to go to questions, and I'm sure my Government House colleagues are ready with microphones, but did you want to say anything about that?
I just wanted to add, we have a lot of conversations about the dignity of risk, and it's really worth thinking about that because people around us want to try and make us safe, and that's part of their love for us. But what they don't realise is that takes so much away from your feeling about yourself. And, you know, we walking across North Terrace, we all take risks all the time, and that's part of who we are. You take that away from somebody, and I think that's where you were saying about where the line gets crossed. You know, is we're allowed to take some risks. We might fall. And by the way, when you're over a certain age, you have a fall. When you're younger, you fall over.
All right. Now, can I get a sense, please, from the audience of who thinks they might like to ask a question at some stage in the next half hour? Okay, I'm sure there will be more, but who are the 2? Only 2 so far? All right, I'm going to start, if I can, in the 3rd row in the middle, and then go to the woman in the front row. And then others, please. All right, I've got 1, 2, and then are you pointing to someone in front of you, or are you? All right, sorry, I couldn't see that. That'll be the 3rd one. Okay, please.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm Elizabeth Shepherd. I'm associated as a ratepayer of Unled with an active ageing group. I stopped working as a magistrate a couple of years ago, and I've had some involvement in the intervention orders that are rarely used for elder abuse, but not enough in my view, but that's another topic, because I don't think people are aware of them. But my question is around the slow demise of face-to-face service from banks, telecommunications companies, etc., and how that impacts so dramatically on elderly people, particularly those who are not tech savvy. Is there anything, do you think, that can be done by all levels of government to advocate for this cause directly with corporations. I can't hear any advocacy in the public domain about that topic.
Now, can I just, what I'm going to do, Elizabeth, thank you very much for that question. We're going to take the first three that have been identified. I'll make a note of them, and then we'll ask Anne and Kay to answer them, you know, as a group, and then we might take another three. So for the front row right here, in the middle with the pink and black and grey jacket.
I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing this afternoon. My name is Margaret Gardner. I'm the Deputy Mayor of Alexandrina Council, and I'm older than both of you.
Oh!
Not a lot older. My question is, you haven't talked about being fit, and so I'd like to understand a little about how you think older people, like older than 45, which is what I am really, should be or could be.
Excellent question, Margaret, thank you. And then we had on the aisle, on the left-hand side here for the third one.
Thank you very much for this conversation. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. My name is Elaine Butler, and I confess to having a big birthday this year also. I'd like to see if we could change the discourse a little bit, the general discourse, and that start to look at the input that people over the age of 45, but particularly those who have left paid work, could actually contribute. We've been industry, we've been academics, educators, social workers, you know it. The comment about the Council of the Elders I thought was really interesting. I'd love to have something like that where our collective wisdom, given the disruptive times that we've lived through and that we're living in, could be harnessed, and so there's a little bit of respect for, but also use of all of the things that we know. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Elaine. So we've got direct service and all of the issues around that, fitness, and then changing the general discourse about harnessing collective wisdom. And who would like to go first?
So I'm happy to have a go at all
By
of
all
them,
means,
bring
have a
that
go,
together.
and then Kay can have a go.
Yeah. So in terms of face-to-face, it's something that at COTA, South Australia, we're on about all the time. So we lobby organisations to say, you know, don't just, you know, you've got your online where you have to apply for things, but have you got, you know, a form that could be posted? Remember posting? That could be posted out to people or collected or whatever. A really good initiative that's just started is that Services Australia, that used to be called Centrelink, you all know that. They now have an aged care officer where, guess what, you can actually ring up and make an appointment to see them and go in and see them face to face. So that's a new initiative that started. But we hear all the time about people who can't work their mobile phones or something, and they ring up and the first question is, like, what's your browser? What browser are you on? And, you know, like immediately, none of us know what that means, so you can't even continue the conversation. So, yes, we're on it. We're lobbying really hard to try and make sure there's face-to-face opportunities for people as well. And if you've got hearing difficulties, really hard on the phone when you can't understand what somebody is saying. Was it your question about fitness?
Yeah,
yes.
here at the front.
So I was just going to say that when I've got my 2 Ps and an F, I'm really aware that there are what I call enablers in my brain, enablers. And enablers are things that allow me to do those things. So if you haven't got money, if you haven't got a roof over your head, if you've inherited really poor genes, and you've got poor health, all of those things and probably a whole lot more stop you being able to do that. So I take your point, it's really important. Probably 45's even too late to start exercising and whatever and looking after your diet and whatever, but any time you do it is a good time to do it, and we all know that. COTA, again, I'm not just being an advocate for COTA, but COTA has a fabulous program called Strength for Life that people can join. It's not expensive at all. You get a proper assessment. Great groups of people. They're all around the metro and country areas. Some ethnic specific ones as well. And people can get a bit of socialisation, your second P, the people, while you're improving your fitness. So that's great. And I can't remember the
And
third
the harnessing collective wisdom.
Do you
Now,
want
why
to
don't
do
we,
that?
let's harness your collective wisdom, shall we, Kay, on how we can change the general discourse. We were talking about this earlier in a way. There is an enormous amount of experience, of wisdom, of perspective, I suppose, as people age. As a society, we're clearly not tapping into all of that or into as much of that as we could. Can we do anything about it, Kay?
Well, I think belonging to an organisation that advocates for, like OPAN, which advocates for older people in the older person's advocacy network, mainly for people getting aged care in the home or aged care. You're involved in that too, Anne. And participating by helping them with numbers, by joining and finding out about it. But the lady up there, yes, you could actually apply for the Council of Elders because they're renewing parts of it every year. And where do the advertisements go?
I don't know, but
And
they will be out in the next couple of months.
So
yeah.
there's something for you to look out for. It's a feisty group, but they've got to have, you know, one from Victoria, and one from New South Wales, and one from South Australia, and some diversity in all sorts of aspects of people's lives.
You could join COTA.
You could join COTA, but I think advocating is important. And you know, I, as a senator, a lot of people came in and talked to me. Can I give you one example? They came and said, we find it so difficult, a child with a disability, and people had bought an apartment for their son or daughter to live in, maybe with another person from their business service, which used to be called shelter workshops. And they bought it 40 years ago for $14,000 or $20,000, 50 years ago now. And suddenly they go to apply for their age pension and it's counted as an asset because it's in their name because their child didn't have it. Now they came to me and said, you know, this is sort of unfair because my daughter hasn't got testimony capacity. So I went to the leader and said, this needs to be fixed. He said, you fix it and I'll support you. We now have a thing called the Special Disability Trust where you can put, it's indexed by CPI, it's about 700,000 now. Grandma can downsize and put some money in. Close relatives can put money in. It can only be spent on things like a home or medical treatment or medical equipment to save a trustee abusing it, often a son or a daughter or brother or sister. But that was because people came to me with what I thought was a legitimate concern, and sometimes you don't use your senators enough for those broad things that aren't but local. And so going and seeing a senator and saying, this is an issue, it seems unfair, and it was unfair, and we got it fixed. So using your background and your skill and your knowledge to go, not, you know, painting the offices and do whatever else to get the message, go and sit quietly and say, we've got a solution. You could have a special trust. And they came up with a solution. So you can actually get things done. And that was a blessing for a lot of people who've been really trying hard to provide for their son or daughter when they died. With regard to fitness and health, it is a blessing to have your health. And, you know, if you haven't inherited bad genes, as Anne said, but, you know, I see people who are physically disabled who keep trying to do as much exercise as they can to keep what you've got. And I think that's the important thing. It's about keeping as much mobility and as much flexibility as you can given your circumstances. And I do exercises every morning before I get up that my physio has given me. And I feel, if I get out of bed and I haven't done them, I feel guilty. And that's what you should feel if you haven't done it. And walking is vital. Just getting out and walking is important. Nature bathing, I call it. So and being with people, I think, is really important for your well-being. There was the other question over the other issue.
Yes, there was the direct service.
Oh, yeah,
we might though, unless you've got anything
Well,
specific
I will
to add.
just
Go
say
ahead.
that Anna Bligh, who's with the Australian Banking Association, is very aware of this. And as Commissioner I met, and I know the new Commissioner will be meeting with her, saying you've got to do this, this and this. But you need backup from people saying, you know, there are lots of things that could be done to ease things. Like, for example, if I've got a bit of problem and I spend too much money because I've lost a bit of capacity, why couldn't my son or daughter give you know how they say you've just spent too much money and they text you? Why wouldn't you say there's been a demand, people are spending a bit of money, do you want to check it? Or limit it to $300 so I can go out and buy a dress or have some autonomy. And I said, the banks, get some creativity into it so that I don't lose all my ability to spend some money, but it's controlled so I don't get scammed or I don't spend it on something that a piece of jewellery that I'll never use.
Can I just add as moderator, changing the discourse is often something that just happens in person by person. And just looking at the room, a number of people I know, you're already changing the discourse, many of you. I do think local councils, though, have are particularly close to communities, and local council programs to sort of recognise it's not just the services that you run, but the discourse that can be amplified at the local government level. Just on fitness, I mean, I don't have a significant birthday coming up, but I had one not so long ago. I try and exercise 4 or 5 times a week, a couple of Pilates sessions. Rod and I try and get out on the golf course as patrons of the Royal Adelaide Golf Club. I'm in training for the long row at Renmark, so I've got a rowing machine upstairs, and later on this afternoon I'll be running around the Torrens. So, I mean, it's about habits for life in a way, but and it doesn't all need to cost money. There are lots of things that you can do, I think, in a city like Adelaide, and again through accessing council programs and walking. You almost can't beat it. But I'm a fan, and not only as a spectator of all of the sports organisations that I'm patron of. Now, can we take another batch of 3 questions if there are 3 more? Now, all right, 4 hands have gone up, but the gentleman in the very back row, and then if it's all right, the gentleman in the, yes, sitting right there, Paul, I think, might be, and then over across the aisle to the woman with the pink scarf. I know there was a 4th hand, and we'll go first to you in the next bracket of questions, but the gentleman in the back row, please.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Mike Runge, I went on a gap year 7 years ago, and I'm still on it. I'm loving watching 3 women with phenomenal purpose sharing their purposes, and I really like Anne's comment about the need for purpose. But for many of us, it's very hard to find, and one of the things I notice is that governments and employers and people themselves invest heavily in finding purpose of younger people. Should governments and employers and others invest heavily in helping us to find and skill up for our new purposes?
Do you want to gather them?
I'm going to gather them, skilling up for new purposes. And then I think we had Paul.
Thank you. I entered unpaid redirection in 2016, and I think my wife said, this is the deal, it's breakfast and dinner but not lunch. So I actually looked after Community Shed in Mitcham Council, and one of the things that really struck me was the number of men coming in very lost that have just retired. And it struck me that I think we've got to concentrate on preparing people for retirement as well. And I'd just like to know the panel's thoughts on that.
Preparing for retirement. They do, actually. Yeah. Thank you. Paul and Mike, and then across the aisle.
Hello, I'm from Legacy, South Australia, Kathy Darling-Brooks. So I was widowed very suddenly 20 years ago, and as you probably know, Legacy does look after the widows of our veterans. So I've had 20 years to become quite aware of the stereotypes towards widows, and I've had 20 years to try and break down those barriers and not be shoved away then in society, but to be out there and at times surprising and shocking my son, which I enjoy doing. So breaking down barriers, basically. And it's just, it's quite surprising, I think, the stereotypes that people place on widows. Whereas we're all out there, we're doing great things. In fact, our oldest widow in Legacy has just turned 110. Our youngest is 36 years old with a 10-month-old baby. And we provide a lot of social connection for them, some wonderful activities and things that we do. However, generally, as a single person, and you're suddenly single, wanting to be or willingly, you become very aware of the social isolation that you face. And it really isn't easy to get back in society again at an older age. And social isolation is known to be a major killer. Apparently, research shows a 10-year reduction in life expectancy if you suffer social isolation. So I'm just opening up to you what your thoughts are about that.
Right, well, look, thank you for that question, Kathy, and I think what we get coming through strongly is, the particular, not just the general, but the particular. So maybe start with you, Kay, on that. So skilling up for new purposes, but preparing for retirement, fitting nicely together, and then the question about breaking down barriers and
Well,
widows.
over the past 7 years, or when I was Commissioner, I spent a lot of time talking to businesses, and I said to them, you have a responsibility to, Susan Ryan, who was my predecessor, and, I acknowledged that she was the first Commissioner and really, paved the way for me as the next Commissioner, and we met about every 6 weeks till her untimely death. We used to share a toilet in Old Parliament House. That's how we got to know each other. There weren't many women's toilets in Old Parliament House, and she did a thing called Willing to Work, a report, and one of the things was that a lot of older people left with all the things they'd done never written down. They felt that ringing people, say a real estate agent, too soon after they'd been to look at the place was negative. They'd wait, but it was all in their heads. Or to sell a car, they did this, or to get this piece of equipment working, they did that. And so she talked about the need to transition to retirement, using older people to actually inculcate the next generation down with all the things they were doing that they'd learnt over the course of their jobs. Now, it's changed a lot now because people change their jobs more frequently than they did, so you lose that corporate knowledge quickly and there's more turnover. But I tried to encourage them to get people to think about their retirement. And it's not just about your retirement, it's about where you live. I've got friends who live in houses with, friends recently, in their 60s, who bought a place with 3 stories with a bedroom on the top floor with no lift. And I thought, what on earth are they doing that for? Because they're bike riders, they think they're both doctors, think they're invincible. They only have an accident on the bike, they can't even get to the toilet because there's no toilet on the ground floor. So you have to think not just about retiring. Oh, I used that terrible word.
Yes,
Excuse me. Not just redirecting yourself when you've finished paid employment.
That's the
long
longer
way
term,
round.
yes.
To think about, I have to plan for my future. I've just moved and I've bought a 1-bedroom place behind me to put someone in to help look after me. Now I'm very fortunate I can afford to, well, I haven't, the bank and I are fortunate we can afford to do it. And they gave me a loan till I was 108. I understand how you give somebody a loan till 108, but I guess they think I can repay it by selling, when I die, by selling my home. But it's about thinking ahead about when you're not working, just suddenly walk out of work one day. And we talk about transition to retirement of people going, and I think there's more that people think I could work 4 days a week or 3.5 days a week, to transition to not working for paid. It's awful. It's like not swearing, isn't it? And so it's absolutely vital, but it's important about planning for where you're going to live. Because often when it happens so suddenly, the sort of place you want to live in is not there. So it's about thinking. The other thing I'll say now, because I might get a chance to say it at the end, if you haven't got your will, your power of attorney in place, and your advance care directive done, you need to go home and put a notice on your fridge door and do it. So many people don't have those documents in place, and then what happens is you lose a lot of autonomy, because if you haven't got your power of attorney in place, it may be the public trustee who decides who does your business for you, and you don't want them doing it. So it's absolutely vital. If you haven't done it, I can see some of you squirming. If there's any take-home message today for those who haven't got those documents done, get onto it straight away.
Thank you, Kay. Anne?
So I think that in those three questions, there's a general theme through it, which is about the assumptions that we all make. So we as older people make assumptions, and our employers and the people around us make assumptions as well. And I think in terms of transitioning out of full-time work, what I used to hear when I was Equal Opportunity Commissioner all the time is older people saying, well, and employers saying as well, well, the younger people deserve a chance to do this training. You know, they're going to be the ones that are going to go on and go forward in this employment. And so as older people ourselves, we often put limitations on ourselves. You know, we say, oh, well, we couldn't learn that, or we, you know, these people here, my grandchildren deserve the chance to do those things and learn and develop. And so we take ourselves out of the picture. And I'm really aware of that thing about blaming the victim, so I don't want to do that. But I do think we make assumptions as well, that it's time we got out of the way, or you hear younger people say, oh, there's a block at the top because they're so old and they're just hanging on. You know, like it's our turn to say, these are the things we know, and maybe we know well enough so we can help younger people. We can reduce our hours and help younger people with what we know. Because when you get around to my age and Kay's age, like, we know stuff, don't we? Yep. We know stuff. And you all know stuff because, you know, you've lived life. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's that sort of theme to finding what the purpose is as you move through life. And knowing that there's an opportunity to refresh that, to think about it. Like, in a way, as you get older, you have less encumbrances on you, and you can think more about yourself. Like, what turns me on? What gives me joy? What do I enjoy doing? And make a beeline for it. Don't think, oh, somebody younger should have it. You know, let's make a beeline for it and get onto it and find those opportunities to contribute, as I think someone was saying down the back, contribute to the things that you think are meaningful and purposeful and you enjoy, because I'm sure you know stuff about it and you'll be helpful. So that's one thing. The other theme I wanted to pick up is the widow thing, and like, it is just such a horrible assumption, isn't it? And so people don't even use the word anymore because, you know, you must be on the lookout for the second husband or whatever it is. You know, it's so demeaning, isn't it? Where you're a woman with knowledge and intelligence and passions, and that's how it should go forward.
But it most probably, we should get rid of the word. I mean, spinster. When I was at school, any unmarried teacher was a spinster. You don't hear that word anymore, do you? So maybe, and your words are important, so maybe we don't need the word widow.
Now, maybe we don't. There are a number of things perhaps we don't need. I'm conscious that I promised, there was a gentleman, I think on the right side at the back, and I promised him the next question, which is in fact going to have to be the last question, if he still wants to ask it. Is there anyone who put their hand up before when we had the last three?
Yeah,
Oh, not a gentleman? Okay, it was you. Sorry, I couldn't see. If you would like to ask the last question, which will get a brief answer because we pride ourselves on finishing on time, and I want to give our two panellists to give one final piece of advice if they felt they haven't said everything they want to by way of advice. Please.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Annie Campbell and I'm at Unley Council too with their Active Ageing Alliance. I want to just make a couple of comments. First of all, when I retired in 2016, I called it rewirement.
Oh, yes.
And I'm still saying it and still doing it, so it's a way to go. Language is very important to me, and the comments you've made today have really reinforced that. A lot of us despair about the media and how even public policies, and I've written a lot of public policies in my time, refer generally to us as a tsunami or as a burden.
Yeah.
Now, with all the isms, if we were to write policy, for example, by comparison of disabled, we would not say they are a burden on society. But yet it's as commonplace now to refer to older people as a burden, which leaves us no room.
Now, Annie, what's your question? I'm going to ask you to get to the question.
So what can we do about this? How can we tackle the big problems with ageism, which is in media and in public policy?
Well, that's a really big question for a quick answer at the end.
I
Can you do it?
My wrap up with that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
My wrap up
That's
was
unfair.
Sorry.
That's unfair because you've got a prompt for your wrap-up.
That's all right. You're nimble. You've had all that experience on the floor of the Senate.
I absolutely agree with what you were saying. And my wrap-up was going to be that all of you, so we've got, I think, 110, 20 or something in the room, you are now champions against ageism. You're the champions. Because what I feel is that we need people, and this is the response to your question, you know, we need people calling out the media, you know, moving away from putting limitations on ourselves and thinking we can blossom to whatever we want to be. So you're the champions. If everybody goes out and talks to another 20 people about it, imagine we can make our tsunami. I totally agree with you about the South Australia's an ageing state, and so we do get that language about we've got a tsunami of older people coming. They're going to be bed blockers in our hospitals. Is the one where, you know, it's terrible. So, like, let's not walk past any of that language or any of that behaviour, and let's be the people that call it out and challenge it and make change for us.
Thank you, Anne. Kay.
Just on that note, you know, the media have a formula that if one person rings, how many it represents that would have rung if they could have bothered to. If all of you saw something in the newspaper and you rang or you wrote a letter to the editor, oh my heavens, you know, who here has written a letter to the editor about seeing burden in the newspaper or rung the television station? Now, did I say any more? You all have got a role to play. And the other thing is that it's absolutely vital that you keep active and involved. And all the evidence shows that to reduce ageism, it's about education. So you educating people about, you know, what they can do to age well. But it's also education and intergenerational projects, intergenerational activities are the best counteract for ageism. Now, we saw the nursing home, old people's home for 4-year-olds. That was wonderful, but really hard to replicate because a lot of money was spent. We had a project that Her Excellency was involved in opening here. Over my time, we had 457 young people paid 457 100-year-olds right around Australia. The stories that came out of that were just mind-blowing. It was one of the best. It counteracted all the horrible things I saw. And we had an exhibition here. You came so far to open it.
Just down the
jumped
road,
over the fence. It was at the parade ground place. Fantastic. And then we had a national exhibition and we had to move to a different venue other than the port. 4,000 people came to see it over a month.
Yep.
And the paintings were better than the Archibalds. And I hope those 457 kids go out and are less ageist. So if you can be involved or encourage intergenerational projects, that's really important. And for you, you was talking about being a widow, you know, I don't have children, I've got young brothers I help rear, but last Friday night I had 3 university students that I happened to know who had come to, a lot of them come to Canberra to the ANU because I've moved to Canberra to live, and I had them for dinner. They ate a huge amount of food, but that's important for me to have them, so you can actually generate something like that for kids who've come from overseas or kids who are, you know, to come and eat a home-cooked meal is just, for them, a gift. So there's all sorts of ways you can actually start to engage, but particularly engage with younger people.
Well, Kay and Anne, there's a saying often used in a different context, but I'm going to repurpose it here, which is you can't be what you can't see. Thank you both for being 2 such wonderful role models for those about to have your significant milestone birthday. Now, Hugh, I know as official secretary, Hugh Borriman is just going to sort of wrap it up, but I wanted to say, yes, I know it's flown, hasn't it? I wanted to thank you both myself for being wonderful role models who I will look to over the next 16 and a half years. Over to you, Hugh.
Your Excellency. The most important part of the wrap-up is, of course, to invite you to join me in thanking Her Excellency, Dr. Kay Patterson and Ms Anne Burgess for such a wonderful hour. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next winter conversation will be held here on Friday the 5th of July, which will see Her Excellency in conversation on the future of healthcare, focusing on genomics and precision medicine. And the guest will be Professor Alex Brown, the Professor of Indigenous Genomics with the Telethon Institute and the Australian National University, and Professor Deborah White, who is the theme leader of precision cancer medicine at SAMRI. I hope you can join us. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.